this latest clash between Tyler Cohen and former Trump campaign aide Caroline Sunshine turned into one of the most revealing debates yet over the future of American democracy and voting rights. What started as a conversation about the Virginia Supreme Court ruling quickly spiraled into a brutal exposure of Republican contradictions on gerrymandering, voter suppression, and political power across the South. Cohen wasted no time pressing Sunshine on why Republicans constantly claim to support fairness and checks and balances, yet continue redrawing congressional maps in states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and North Carolina in ways critics argue are designed to lock Democrats and black voters out of meaningful representation for generations. The moment Sunshine was asked whether Donald Trump calling for 5 additional Republican seats in Texas was also a power grab, the entire defense completely fell apart. Instead of answering directly, the conversation suddenly shifted into talking points about illegal immigration, Hassan Piker, and every distraction imaginable, anything except the actual issue being discussed. But Cohen stayed locked in, repeatedly bringing the focus back to one central question. If Republicans truly believe gerrymandering is wrong, why is there not a single major GOP figure pushing for a nationwide ban? The debate became much bigger than Virginia. It exposed what many critics believe is a coordinated Republican strategy to maintain power through aggressive redistricting while Democratic-led states continue playing by rules Republicans abandoned years ago. From the dismantling of the Voting Rights Act to the cracking of heavily black cities like Memphis and Nashville into multiple districts, the accusations being made here are serious, and they go directly to the heart of whether America's electoral system is still functioning fairly. And by the end of this exchange, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't just another political argument on cable news. It was a direct confrontation over who gets representation, who gets power, and whether democracy itself is becoming increasingly unequal depending on which state you live in. Watch the full debate carefully, because there are several moments here where the arguments completely unravel in real time, and I'll give you my full thoughts as we go along and again at the end.
Bring in Tyler Cohen, host of the No Lie with Tyler Cohen podcast, and Caroline Sunshine, former communications aide for President Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Welcome back to both of you. Brian, let's start with you. You have been on this redistricting train for years, telling Democrats that you should redistrict. A lot of times they wouldn't listen to you. Now it seems like they finally are and realizing the risk of this. What's your reaction to what happened in Virginia and what Democrats should do now?
Look, I think that the reaction to what happened in Virginia is that it is the perfect encapsulation of the asymmetry between the two sides, where we have independent redistricting commissions in all of the Democratic weapons. And, even when you go to the voters, even when 3 million people show up to vote in a referendum that based on some small technicality, all of those voters' voices are going to be silenced. At the same time that we have Republicans in Florida, in Texas, in North Carolina, possibly South Carolina, Tennessee, all who've just decided by fiat that they're going to redraw their states' maps. I mean, basically ushering in elected legislatures, but redrawing the state maps without a single person weighing in on this stuff, basically ushering in Jim Crow 2.0 in the South. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where we see no black representation in any of these southern states. And so I think it's a wake-up call to Democrats across the country. If you are a Democrat in New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, this is the time to start fighting back and recognize the urgency of this moment right here. Because Republicans don't believe that Democrats have a right to exist as a party. And so if we don't start fighting back and if we don't stop unilaterally disarming, we're basically going to good government ourselves into obscurity.
Caroline, what do you think of this? Is it Jim Crow 2.0?
Well, so you're opposed to this because you think that this dilutes people's political power unfairly? Is that why you're opposed to this?
I think that it dilutes the ability of people in certain jurisdictions to be able to vote for their representatives. Nashville has been cracked into multiple districts. Memphis has been cracked in multiple districts. And so there's no way that those people who live in those jurisdictions can vote for their representatives because the Republicans have purposefully gerrymandered those states to dilute their voting power.
So you're against diluting voting power?
I'm against gerrymandering.
Okay, so do you support then illegal immigrants being allowed to vote in elections?
Illegal immigrants don't vote in federal elections.
Well, illegal immigrants are who Democrats want to vote in federal elections.
But that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter if they want. It doesn't matter what anybody wants.
If you are against diluting political power for anybody, you should not want illegal immigrants to vote in American elections because we can't dilute the political power of American citizens.
this isn't a discussion about that. And illegal immigrants are not allowed to vote in federal elections. What about this move of what the Supreme Court did and what Republicans are doing right now when it comes to redistricting? A lot of this started with President Trump telling Texas to get him more congressional districts.
Well, I think checks and balances played out here. I mean, the Virginia Supreme Court said this can't happen in 2026, but it could happen in 2028. So I'm not sure what the big deal is here. This went through the democratic process, and the Supreme Court, the judge struck it down, saying the language in the referendum was flagrantly misleading. And he's not saying it can't happen. He's just saying it can't happen in 2026 because it's unconstitutional. And he's correct, because that is a flagrant power play by Democrats to try to reshape the midterms in 2026.
So if you think
now,
that's
my question for you
that's a power play,
is
was it a power play when Donald Trump demanded the same thing in Texas? Said that he was entitled to 5 seats in Texas? Was that a power play?
Texas isn't Virginia. The states are sovereign according to the Constitution. The 10th Amendment says federalism. Each state has the right to conduct it differently.
I'm asking you if
it played out how it played out in Texas, because Texas isn't Virginia.
I understand that Texas is not Virginia, but I want to know if you think if it was a power play.
Where does this go? Because you want to talk about power plays. I would love to know. Hassan Piker on your side of the aisle said today that as a result of this ruling, if a peaceful revolution is not possible, then violent revolution is inevitable. So do you agree with Hassan Piker?
I'm not Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker can.
But do you agree with that?
Hassan Piker can speak for himself.
What does he mean by that?
I don't know. You can ask him. I'm not Hassan Piker. I'm
But
Brian.
do you agree with that? Do you condemn that?
Call Hassan Piker
Where
and
do you
ask.
want to see this go?
What I'm here. I don't care what Hassan Piker says. I'm not Hassan Piker.
I don't think Brian's pushing for a violent revolution.
Yeah,
either.
Are you or no? Just to be clear, because where does this go now that the Supreme Court in Virginia has ruled
Here's
this
where it
is not
goes.
constitutional?
It goes to me calling on every Democratic elected official, either in the legislature or the governor's office, in Democratic states across the country, and demanding that they redraw maps to fight fire with fire and actually counteract what Republicans have done in a raft of different states across the country and what they continue to do in southern states across the country in response to the Voting Rights Act being gutted.
Do you think that there should be a national ban on gerrymandering to try to stop this whole thing around the country?
I'm not opposed to it, but I also believe that the Constitution says, the 10th Amendment, what is not outlined here is left to the states. And I think states have a right to decide their own process. And that's what I'm arguing with you, is the process played out here in Virginia. It was put on the ballot on a referendum directly with the voters. It barely passed. The language was extremely misleading. There was an appeal. It then went to the state Supreme Court. What's the problem here? Checks and balances played out.
And you support a national ban?
100%. And in fact, when the Democrats put that forward, a national ban on gerrymandering in 2021, the Freedom to Vote Act, every single Democrat voted for it. Every single Republican voted against it.
Do you think the United States Supreme Court, which has supported Texas's right to do this and has supported California's right to do this, will support Virginia's right to do redistricting? You think they might overturn this?
No. I think that this Supreme Court has proven itself to be an arm of the Republican Party, if nothing else. And we have seen numerous instances where, whether it's this U.S. Supreme Court, where you had a bunch of justices beat their chest about the importance of precedent and the Voting Rights Act, which is, that precedent has been reaffirmed over and over and over again for the past 60 years, just like Roe was precedent that was reaffirmed over and over again. The Supreme Court stands for its own adherence to the Republican Party.
You think the Supreme Court might step in?
I don't think they're going to hear this. I don't see why they would. Again, the people of Virginia spoke. And what's interesting is when this referendum was put on the ballot, let's be very clear, it disenfranchised the rights and the voices, if we're talking about who got disenfranchised with the referendum, of rural Virginians. Yeah. This referendum transferred power from majority of the state, which is rural Virginians, and consolidated it among the swamp, which is people who work in D.C. and live in Virginia. But I didn't hear you speaking up then.
And I, by the way, I would concede that when you have a gerrymandered map, certain people are disenfranchised, which is why this whole thing was sparked off after Republicans first went after Texas. I didn't agree with it when it happened in Texas, but what I don't want to see is unilateral disarmament. I think gerrymandering is a scourge all around. But if you really care about disenfranchisement, then you'll care about it when it happens right off the bat. You'll care about it when it happens in Texas. You'll care about it when all of a sudden Memphis is cracked into multiple districts, Nashville is cracked into multiple districts, and those people have no voting power because that's 100% Republican.
And that
now.
is true in California now, that Republicans are being disenfranchised by Prop 50.
But the difference
and the districts are not. It's not fair to Republican voters. And the idea of like a 52-0 map here is not fair. Just like it's not fair what we're seeing in Tennessee and
Correct.
other
But
places
the
where there's going to be no Democratic representation. That's bad for democracy.
Correct. It's terrible for democracy.
Right.
The difference is there's only one party that actually supports a nationwide ban on gerrymandering, and that's the
But
Democrats.
violent revolution, to be clear, is also bad for democracy.
And
I
neither
agree.
Brian
Violent
nor
revolution.
myself are endorsing violent revolution, just to be clear. Always against
you.
political violence. I've said that repeatedly. Quickly.
After watching that entire exchange from beginning to end, it's hard not to feel like this debate represented something much bigger than just another political argument on cable news. What made the conversation so intense was the fact that every time Tyler Cohen brought the discussion back to Republican gerrymandering and voting rights, Caroline Sunshine struggled to directly answer the questions being asked. Instead, the conversation kept shifting toward completely unrelated talking points. And viewers immediately noticed it. Because at the center of this debate was a very simple issue. If politicians claim to support fairness and democracy, then shouldn't those standards apply equally to both parties? That's the contradiction Cohen kept exposing throughout the exchange. Republicans often criticize Democratic-led states when it comes to redistricting, but at the same time, many Republican-controlled states continue aggressively redrawing congressional maps in ways critics argue are designed to lock in political power for years. And this is why people are paying so much attention to conversations like this right now. Gerrymandering is no longer just a complicated political term most Americans ignore. It directly affects representation, elections, and whose voices actually matter in the system. When cities and communities are strategically split apart into different districts, people begin questioning whether elections are truly competitive anymore, or whether outcomes are being engineered before voting even begins. One of the biggest moments in this debate came when Cohen pointed out the imbalance between blue states using independent commissions while many Republican-led states continue maximizing partisan maps. That argument clearly put Sunshine on the defensive because instead of addressing the issue directly, the discussion quickly moved into immigration and culture war distractions that had nothing to do with the original point. And honestly, that's what frustrated many viewers the most. People are exhausted by politicians avoiding direct answers. Whether you lean left or right politically, most people can recognize when someone is dodging the actual question being asked. That's why this exchange went viral so quickly online. But beyond the political drama, the bigger concern here is what all of this means for the future of democracy itself. Trust in institutions is already extremely low in America. Trust in elections, the media, Congress, even the courts, all of it has been declining for years. And debates like this only highlight how divided the country has become over what fairness even means anymore. At the end of the day, though, the biggest takeaway from this entire conversation is consistency. If gerrymandering is wrong, then it should be wrong no matter which party benefits from it. If protecting democracy truly matters, then those principles can't disappear the moment political power is on the line. But I want to hear your thoughts after watching this debate. Do you think gerrymandering has become one of the biggest threats to fair elections in America today? Or do you think both parties are equally guilty? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more political debates, breaking news, and major media moments